My family tried to sell Grandpa's farm while he was helpless in a hospital bed. They said I was too emotional to understand, but they never knew he had left me one signed paper that could destroy their whole plan. My name is Meritt Vale, and I was 31 the week I learned that one signed paper could stop an entire family from selling a farm they never worked for. My grandfather had a stroke before sunrise on a Monday in November. By Friday afternoon, while he was still in a hospital bed, trying to remember how to move his left hand, my parents and my uncle had already scheduled a closing on Willowbend Farm. They said it was for his care. They said it was responsible. They said I was too emotional to understand land, money, and hard decisions. What they did not know was that 7 months earlier, Grandpa Bramwell had driven himself to a small law office beside the Brookhaven County Courthouse and signed one document that changed everything. He had seen this coming before any of us wanted to believe it. He had watched his sons look at his farm the way hungry men look at a locked pantry. And long before the ambulance came down the gravel road, before the hospital bracelets and the family whispers and the fake concern, he had made sure Willowbend could not be taken quietly. The call came at 4:38 on a Monday morning. I remember the exact minute because I stared at the phone for 3 full rings before my mind understood what was happening. Outside my apartment window in Brookhaven, Missouri, the streetlights were still on, and the world looked cold and blue like it had not decided to become morning yet. My father's name was on the screen. Tavern Vale rarely called me. He texted when he needed something small, like a birthday reminder or a copy of a county form, but he did not call before sunrise unless something had broken badly. When I answered, I heard wind first, then his breathing. "It's your grandfather," he said. "He collapsed out by the north fence. The ambulance is taking him to Mersey Ridge." For a second, I could not move. I pictured Grandpa Bramwell standing in the frost, one hand on the old cedar post, his canvas coat buttoned wrong, his boots dark with mud. He was 82, but he still walked the fences at sunrise because he said land did not respect a lazy owner. "Is he awake?" I asked. My father paused. That pause told me more than his words. "They think it's a stroke." I drove to Willowbend first because Mersey Ridge Hospital was 40 minutes in the other direction, and something in me needed to see the place where he had fallen. The farm sat 6 miles outside Brookhaven on County Road 18, past soybean fields, a closed feed store, and a line of cottonwoods that bent toward the creek like old women sharing secrets. When I turned into the gravel drive, my headlights caught the ambulance tracks pressed deep into the soft ground. The old dinner bell beside the porch moved in the wind, slow and lonely, making no sound. Grandpa's tractor sat near the north pasture with its engine off, but its key still turned halfway. A dented thermos lay on its side in the grass. Coffee had spilled into the frost and made a brown stain like a wound. I stood there in my courthouse flats and thin jacket, shaking from the cold and from the thought that he had been alone when it happened. Then I saw something else. Bright orange survey flags had been pushed into the west field, 5 of them in a straight line, cutting toward the peach orchard. At the hospital, my family was already gathered in the waiting area like they had been called to a meeting instead of a crisis. My mother, Sybil, wore a cream sweater and pearl earrings. She had brought a leather tote, a folder, and a travel mug from the expensive coffee shop near the bank. My Uncle Kester stood by the window, thumbs hooked in his belt, talking low on his phone. My cousin Phaedra was typing something with both thumbs, her face arranged into sadness whenever someone looked at her. My father sat in a plastic chair with his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. "Where is he?" I asked. My mother rose and opened her arms like we were in public, and she remembered how mothers were supposed to behave. "Meritt, sweetheart, don't panic. They're running tests." I stepped around her. "Is he conscious?" "Not fully," she said, "but the doctors are hopeful." Kester ended his call and looked at me with a strange kind of impatience. "This is going to be a long road," he said. "A farm that size is too much for an old man. We need to start thinking clearly." It had been less than 3 hours since Grandpa hit the ground. They were already saying farm like it was a problem to solve. I should tell you what Willowbend Farm was before I tell you what they tried to do to it. It was 96 acres of black Missouri soil, an old white farmhouse, a red barn with a roof patched in 2 different colors, a peach orchard planted by my grandmother before she died, and a narrow creek that made a silver bend through the back pasture. It had been in the Vale family for 3 generations, but if you ask me, it had belonged to Grandpa Bramwell more than it belonged to any deed. He knew where every drainage line ran. He knew which field held water after a hard rain. He knew which fence post had been replaced in 1998 because lightning split the old one down the middle. When I was 8, he taught me to read the parcel map hanging in the mudroom. He put his finger on the west field and said, "Land remembers who cared for it, Mary. People forget. Paper gets lost. But land remembers." He was the only person who called me Mary. Everyone else called me Meritt, or, when they wanted to make me feel small, the file girl, because I worked in the county recorder's office and spent my days scanning deeds, marriage licenses, tax liens, and land transfers into the public record system. My family loved Willowbend when it made them look rooted, old-fashioned, respectable. They loved taking Christmas photos by the barn. They loved telling people Grandpa still owned nearly 100 acres. They loved peaches from the orchard, eggs from the coop, and jars of blackberry jam when he made too much, but they did not love the work. My father Tavrin had grown up there, but he left as soon as he could and opened a small insurance office in town. He liked clean shoes, quiet phones, and problems that could be handled with a signature. My mother Sybil liked the story of farm life, not the smell of it. She used phrases like family legacy when guests were listening and that muddy place when they were not. Uncle Kester, Grandpa's younger son, had stayed near agriculture, but only because it made money for him. He owned Vale Equipment Exchange, a business that bought and sold used tractors, hay balers, trailers, and anything with an engine and a loan attached. He was charming at auctions, loud at church breakfasts, and always behind on something. He drove a black pickup with chrome wheels and talked like every bad month was just one good deal away from becoming a comeback. By noon, the doctor told us Grandpa had suffered a moderate stroke. He was alive, he was stable, his left side was weak, his speech was uncertain. They would not know how much he could recover until the swelling went down and therapy began. I stood at the foot of his bed and watched him sleep under a thin hospital blanket, his face turned toward the window, his right hand curled like it was still holding a fence staple. My mother kept whispering about rehab facilities. Kester kept stepping into the hallway to answer calls. Phaedra posted a picture of her hand holding Grandpa's empty work glove with the caption, "Praying for our family as we make hard decisions." I saw it because one of my coworkers sent it to me with a question mark. Hard decisions. Those words stuck in my throat. Around 3, when Grandpa was taken for another scan, I heard my mother speaking near the vending machines. "This might be the only chance to handle the farm before he makes it harder," she said. Kester answered, "Or before Meritt gets in the way." I did not confront them. That was the first thing Grandpa had taught me about records, and the second thing my job had taught me about people. If someone is already hiding something, never warn them that you have started looking. I left the hospital before sunset and drove back to Willowbend, saying I needed to feed the chickens and check the house. The November sky had gone purple behind the silos. The porch light was on, but no one had turned it on from inside. It was on a timer Grandpa installed after Grandma died because, as he said, no house should look abandoned while a heart is still beating in it. I fed the chickens, shut the coop, and walked the west field with my phone flashlight. The survey flags were new. The ground around them was wet and pressed with boot marks. At the barn gate, I found a black realtor-style lockbox, hooked through the chain. Not a farm lock, not Grandpa's. A clean little box with numbers on the front, the kind agents used when they wanted strangers to come and go without knocking. Inside the farmhouse, nothing looked broken, and that made it worse. Grandpa's coffee cup was still in the sink. His reading glasses were open on the kitchen table beside the Rookhaven Gazette. His mudroom coat hung on the same peg where it had hung my whole life, but his desk drawer was open. Grandpa was not a messy man. He kept rubber bands around old receipts and wrote dates on seed packets. If a drawer was open, someone had opened it in a hurry. I searched the desk and found the folder where he kept insurance papers, equipment titles, and old land tax receipts. The folder was there, but the parcel map copy was missing. So were the last 3 years of tax assessments. In the trash can under the desk, I found a torn corner of paper with the words Pike Ridge Development Group and preliminary site use printed on it. My stomach tightened. Developers did not make preliminary site plans for farms they were not trying to buy. I found the purchase draft 2 hours later in the pantry, tucked between a box of canning lids and a stack of paper plates. It was not signed, but it had names. Seller, Bramwell Vale, by authorized family representative. Buyer, Pike Ridge Development Group, LLC, purchase price, $1.18 million. That number might sound large if you have never watched farmland disappear 1 acre at a time. But in Brookhaven County, with road access, creek frontage, and the West Field close to the new bypass, Willowbend was worth far more, especially to a developer. The draft listed a closing date 12 days away at Brookhaven Agricultural Credit Union. At the bottom, in my uncle's blocky handwriting, someone had written, "Need hospital docs before signing." I sat on the pantry floor with the paper in my lap and felt a kind of cold anger I had never felt before. Not loud, not hot, cold enough to make every thought clear. The next morning, my mother called before I could call her. "Meritt," she said, using the patient tone she used when she wanted to make an insult sound like guidance. "Your father and Kester are handling the farm. You should focus on your grandfather emotionally, not legally." I was standing in Grandpa's mudroom, looking at the empty place where the parcel map had been. "Why is there a lockbox on the barn gate?" I asked. Silence. Then a sigh. "Because people need access. Appraisers, insurance people, possible care planners. Care planners don't survey West Fields." Her voice changed, just a little. "You work with files, Meritt, not farms, not medical care, not 7-figure family decisions." I looked through the window at the peach orchard where the leaves had turned dull gold. "Is that what this is? A family decision?" "It is a responsible decision," she said. "Your grandfather cannot run Willowbend anymore. Hospital care is expensive. Rehab is expensive. The land can take care of him now." Then she said the line I would remember later in the closing room. "By the time he wakes up properly, he won't know which field was his." I hung up without answering because if I spoke, I would have screamed, and screaming would have helped her. I made coffee, sat at Grandpa's kitchen table, and forced myself to think like the file girl they always laughed about. A sale needed authority. Authority needed documents. Documents left tracks. If Grandpa had not signed, they needed some kind of power to sign for him. If they had a power of attorney, it might be weak if signed after the stroke. If they had something older, I needed to find it. I searched the desk again, then the bedroom, then the mudroom cabinet where Grandpa kept tractor manuals in a metal drawer. Under the Ford tractor manual, wrapped in a seed catalog from last spring, I found an envelope with my name on it. Not Meritt, not Miss Vale, just Mary in Grandpa's square, careful handwriting. Under my name, he had written, "If they bring strangers to the West Field, call Hollis." My hands started shaking then, not from fear exactly, from the strange feeling of being seen by someone who was lying in a hospital bed, unable to tell me what he had done. Inside the envelope was a certified copy of one recorded document, 11 pages long, with a blue county stamp on the first page. I recognized the format before I understood the content. Agricultural Preservation Easement, Right of First Refusal, and Emergency Farm Stewardship Agreement. Grantor, Bramwell A. Vale. Protected Property, Willowbend Farm, Parcel 1, 1-4, 8-207, Brookhaven County, Missouri. Steward and First Refusal Holder, Meritt Vale. Prepared by Hollis Fenwick, Attorney at Law. Recorded 7 months earlier. Witnessed by Wintley Groves. Notarized and filed in the county record. I read the first page 3 times. The words were legal, dry, and beautiful. Agricultural use, restriction. No commercial subdivision. No storage units, short-term rental cabins, retail buildings, or non-farm development without written release from the easement holder and county agricultural board. Any attempted sale must give Meritt Vale formal notice and 30 days to exercise right of first refusal. In the event of Bramwell Vale's medical incapacity, Meritt Vale shall serve as emergency farm steward for preservation, maintenance, access control, and protection of farm assets. I called Hollis Fenwick at 8:11 the next morning. His office was across from the courthouse, above a closed barber shop with a staircase that smelled like dust, old wood, and winter coats. I had seen him in the recorder's office for years, usually carrying a battered leather briefcase and asking for certified copies, like every page was a small, living thing. He answered his own phone. Fenwick. My name is Meritt Vale. My grandfather is Bramwell Vale. There was a pause, and then his voice softened in a way that told me he had been expecting this call. How is he? Hospital. Stroke. Stable, but not clear. And have they brought strangers to the West Field? I closed my eyes. Yes. Then bring the envelope. Hollis was in his late 60s, thin as a fence rail, with silver hair combed straight back and reading glasses hanging from a black cord around his neck. His office held more paper than furniture. Land maps covered one wall. An old coffee maker coughed in the corner. He did not waste time with sympathy beyond what was needed. He took the document, checked the stamp, and nodded once. Your grandfather came to me in April, he said. He had been to a farm auction and heard Kester talking too freely after 2 beers. Something about Westfield frontage and storage units. Bramwell said, My boys are looking at my dirt like it already forgot my name. I felt that in my chest. Hollis opened a file and laid out the original notes. Grandpa had signed everything while fully competent. He had also seen his family clearly. He did not want to stop all possible sale forever, Hollis explained. He understood age, he understood illness, but he wanted to stop a fast developer sale made under pressure, and he wanted to make sure I had the legal right to step in if he could not. Why me? I asked, though I knew. Hollis looked at me over his glasses. Because you came to repair fence in the rain when your uncle sent a text saying he was busy. Because you know where the tax receipts are. Because Bramwell said you were the only one in the family who saw Willowbend as work before you saw it as money. He turned the document toward me. This paper does not mean the farm can never be sold. It means it cannot be sold the way they are trying to sell it. No development use. No closing without notice to you. No access without the steward's permission. Once incapacity is established, it is recorded, which means any competent title search should find it. What if they claim it was a mistake? Hollis's mouth tightened. Then we prove it was not. He tapped another page. Your grandfather also signed a capacity affidavit from Dr. Elowen Cray at the same time. She confirmed he understood the property, the restriction, and the consequences. He knew exactly what he was doing. For the first time since the phone rang, I breathed all the way in. The farm was not safe yet, but it was not defenseless. Grandpa had left me more than a warning. He had left me legal standing. Hollis made certified copies, gave me a checklist, and told me not to argue with my family. People like this want noise, he said. Noise makes everything look like a family fight. Documents make it a record. Then he leaned back and added, And Meritt, listen carefully. If they are 12 days from closing and they know this easement exists, someone may have already tried to explain it away. We need the closing file. We need the lender. We need any affidavit they sent. And we need current medical evidence that Bramwell cannot sign new documents right now. They might block me from the hospital, I said. Hollis nodded like I had confirmed something he already feared. Then we move before they know how much you know. They did block me from the hospital by Wednesday. I arrived with a clean shirt for Grandpa and a jar of peach preserves because I thought he might like the smell, even if he could not eat it yet. The nurse at the desk gave me a careful, uncomfortable look. I'm sorry, Miss Vale. The designated family contact list has been updated. I felt my face go still. Updated by whom? I can't discuss that. My grandfather wants me here." She looked down at the screen. The current instruction allows visits from Tavern Vale, Sybil Vale, Kester Vale, and Phaedra Vale. Not me. The granddaughter who had fed his animals, the granddaughter named in the recorded document. The file girl had been removed from the room. I stepped into the hallway and called Hollis. He did not sound surprised. "Go to the records office," he said. "Pull the certified easement yourself. Then request a copy of any document recorded on Willowbend in the last 30 days. I'll deal with the hospital." Working in the county recorder's office had never felt powerful before. Most days it felt like dust, fluorescent lights, and people angry about fees. But that afternoon, when I entered Willowbend's parcel number and watched the public record load on my screen, I understood why Grandpa trusted paper. Paper did not care that Kester was charming. Paper did not care that my mother cried well. Paper did not care that my father avoided hard conversations. The easement was there, recorded properly in April, indexed under the correct parcel, clean and visible. But there was something else. A document filed 2 weeks earlier. Affidavit of scrivener's error and intent to release agricultural restriction. My skin went cold. It had been submitted by Kester Vale as family representative, claiming the agricultural easement had been recorded in error and did not reflect Bramwell's true intent. Attached was a blurry copy of a letter, supposedly signed by Grandpa, saying he wanted maximum flexibility for development or sale. The signature looked wrong. Not wildly wrong, just wrong enough. Too round, too smooth. Grandpa's bee always leaned forward like it was walking into weather. This bee stood straight and empty. I printed everything. Certified copies, time-stamped index pages, the affidavit, the fake-looking letter. Then I sat in the staff bathroom for 5 minutes with the papers on my knees. Not crying, not yet. Just trying to understand the level of betrayal. They had not only planned to sell his farm while he was sick, they had tried to erase the one paper he made to stop them. When I came back to my desk, my supervisor, Mrs. Halden, looked at my face and said, "Take the rest of the day." I wanted to say I was fine, but my throat closed. She had known Grandpa for years. Everyone in Rookhaven knew Grandpa. He was the man who brought peaches to the courthouse every August in cardboard boxes and refused money from anyone under 25 because young folks already pay too much for everything. Mrs. Halden put a hand on the stack of papers and said quietly, "Make copies of copies. People who lie once don't stop at one." That night, I went back to Willowbend and found the barn lock changed. Kester's truck was parked by the equipment shed. 2 men in reflective vests were walking near the west field with measuring wheels. I parked behind Kester's truck so he could not leave without speaking to me. He came out of the shed, wiping his hands on a rag, acting surprised to see me, though his eyes went straight to the folder under my arm. "Meritt," he said, "this is not a good time." "For who?" He smiled without warmth. "For you, if you keep sticking your nose into things you don't understand." Behind him, one of the surveyors looked uncomfortable. I pointed to the lockbox on the barn gate. "Take it off." Kester laughed. "You don't own this farm. Neither do you." His smile died. For a moment, I saw the real thing under his charm. Fear. "Your grandfather is lying in a hospital bed. Your dad and I have to make decisions, grown-up decisions. You know how to file papers, not how to save land." I looked at the men in the field. What are they surveying? Drainage. For storage units? He stepped close enough that I smelled coffee and wintergreen gum. "Be careful, Meritt. You're making enemies inside your own family." I did not answer him. I took photos of the surveyors, the truck plates, the lockbox, the new barn lock, and the orange flags. Then I drove to Wintley Groves' farm next door. Wintley was 78, tall and bent, with hands like dry roots and a voice that sounded like gravel in a tin bucket. He had known Grandpa since they were boys. He answered the door in overalls and looked at me for 1 second before saying, "Bramwell's paper finally woke up, didn't it?" I almost laughed from relief. "You witnessed it?" I did. He let me in and poured coffee so strong it could have cleaned tools. He came over in April with Hollis, said he needed someone who knew him before his sons learned to want things. I watched him sign. He was clear as a church bell. Wintley also told me he had seen Kester bring people to the Westfield twice before the stroke. Not farm buyers, he said. Those men looked at land like they were cutting cake. Before I left, he took a folded paper from a cigar box and handed it to me. It was a copy of Grandpa's handwritten note from April. If Kester moves before I'm cold or cured, stand with Mary. Wintley's eyes watered, but his voice stayed hard. I'll stand. By Friday, my mother had started the public story. Phaedra posted a long message online about the painful process of choosing care over nostalgia. She wrote that some relatives were romanticizing dirt, while others were trying to save Grandpa's life. She did not name me, but she did not need to. Rookhaven is small enough that a vague post can still point like a finger. My phone filled with messages from distant cousins and churchwomen. Your mother is only trying to help. The farm can pay for proper care. Don't make this harder for your dad. I did not respond. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to post the easement, the fake affidavit, the developer map. But Hollis warned me again. Do not try your case in comments. Let them think you are quiet. Quiet is useful. So I stayed quiet. I visited the farm, documented every changed lock and every tire track, paid the feed bill from my own checking account, and kept a notebook of dates, times, names, and actions. At night, I slept on Grandpa's couch under an old quilt that smelled like cedar and wood smoke. On the 6th day after the stroke, Hollis got me back into the hospital. He did it with paperwork, of course, the emergency stewardship agreement, a medical release Grandpa had signed in April, and a letter reminding Mercy Ridge that no family member could use a disputed authority document to block a named farm steward from seeing the patient. The hospital did not apologize. Institutions rarely do. They simply updated the visitor list and said, I could go in. Grandpa looked smaller than he had on Monday. His left side still lay heavy. His mouth moved before sound came. I sat beside him and took his right hand. It's Mary, I said. His eyes shifted to me. For a few seconds they were cloudy. Then something in them sharpened. I put a small jar in his palm. Soil from the West Field. It was a strange thing to bring to a hospital, but I knew him. His fingers curled around the glass. His face changed. Not fully, not dramatically, but enough. A tear slipped down toward his ear. He tried to speak. The word came broken. Wes. I leaned closer. I know. He swallowed. Don't. Cut. I held his hand with both of mine. I won't let them. Before I left, Grandpa made a writing motion with his fingers. The nurse brought a clipboard. His hand shook hard, and the letters looked like small, broken fence pieces. He wrote one word. Bell. I stared at it. The dinner bell? His eyelids lowered once. Yes. Back at Willowbend, I went straight to the porch. The dinner bell hung from an iron bracket Grandpa had welded himself. I had rung it as a child when supper was ready, when storms were coming, when Grandma wanted him out of the barn. I ran my fingers under the bell, then along the post. At the back of the wooden support, half hidden under old paint, was a small brass tag screwed into the wood. Parcel 11-4, 8-2, 07. Aged F4/12, Hollis Fenwick, April 12th. Grandpa had marked the parcel number where he knew I would look if he could not explain. Beneath the tag, taped inside a weatherproof pouch, was a second copy of the easement's first page and a note in Grandpa's handwriting. This is not for money, this is for memory. I sat on the porch steps until the sun dropped behind the west field. The survey flags glowed orange in the last light. I thought about every time my family had made me feel small for caring, too attached, too sensitive, too stubborn, too much like Grandpa. But maybe love only looks foolish to people who are trying to price it by the acre. That night I called Hollis and told him about the bell. He was quiet for a long moment. That old man, he said finally, and I heard both grief and admiration in his voice. Then he gave me the next steps. We had 6 days until closing. We would not file a public lawsuit unless we had to. The quieter move was stronger. We would walk into the closing room with the recorded easement, proof of right of first refusal, the stewardship clause, the capacity affidavit from April, the hospital record showing current incapacity, the false scrivener's affidavit, photos of unauthorized survey work, and the development map. Let the bank officer do what banks do, Hollis said. They hate unclear title. They hate development restrictions. Most of all, they hate funding a deal that can turn into litigation before the ink dries. The family meeting happened 2 days before closing. My mother called it a care discussion and held it in Grandpa's own kitchen, which told me everything. She sat at the head of the table as if the chair had already changed owners. Kester stood by the stove. Tavrin sat near the window, rubbing his thumb over the rim of a coffee mug. Phaedra had her phone face down beside her, though I knew she wanted to record whatever made me look bad. Sybil placed a printed brochure on the table. Not a rehab brochure. A glossy folder from a private assisted living center outside Columbia. This is what the sale provides, she said. Safety, dignity, professional care. And what does Pike Ridge Development provide? I asked. Her face tightened. Kester cut in. Don't start. I looked at my father. Dad, did Grandpa agree to sell? Tavrin would not meet my eyes. He would want us to be practical. That's not an answer. My mother's voice grew soft, dangerous. Meritt, your grandfather is no longer capable of understanding what he owns. It is cruel to pretend otherwise. He understood enough in April. Kester's head snapped toward me. There it was. The tiny crack. The proof that the paper was not a surprise to him. What happened in April? Phaedra asked. Nobody answered her. My father closed his eyes. My mother recovered first. This is exactly what I mean. You take one old conversation and turn it into some fantasy where you are the chosen protector. You are a records clerk. Your uncle understands equipment. Your father understands insurance. I understand care planning. You understand stamps. I stood. My hands were steady. I was grateful for that. Then you should not have any trouble with a clean title search. Kester slammed his palm on the table so hard the coffee mug jumped. Enough. Grandpa's old wall clock ticked behind him, the same clock that had counted Sunday dinners, thunderstorms, and quiet mornings after Grandma died. I looked at the 3 people trying to sell the room around them. I'll see you at the closing, I said. My mother's expression changed, but only for a breath. Fear passed across her face like a bird shadow over a field. The next day, Hollis received the closing packet from a contact at the credit union. Ledra Boone, the bank officer assigned to the transaction, had already flagged the file. She had found the easement during the title review and requested clarification. Kester had sent the scrivener's affidavit and the questionable letter, claiming Grandpa had changed his mind and wanted full sale flexibility. But there was no recorded release from the County Agricultural Board. No signed release from me as first refusal holder. No formal notice served. No clean change showing the restriction had been removed. In other words, the deal was standing on boards, laid over a ditch. Hollis smiled for the first time in days when he told me, Ledra Boone is careful. Careful people are useful. We prepared binders that evening at his office. One for the bank, one for the buyer, one for the record, one for us. Each tab had a label. Easement, right of refusal, stewardship, capacity, hospital incapacity, false affidavit, survey photos, development map, witness statement, Grandpa's bell note. You may not need to speak much, Hollis said. But if you do, speak like a record. Short, clear, no insults. Even if they insult me? Especially then. The morning of the closing was bright and cold. Frost silvered the fence wires at Willowbend. I fed the chickens before sunrise, checked the water trough, and walked to the west field one more time. The peach trees stood bare, their branches black against a pale sky. I pulled the orange survey flags from the ground one by one and laid them on the porch. Maybe that was not legally important. Maybe Hollis would have told me to leave them as evidence. but I needed Grandpa's field to breathe before I went to that room. I changed into a navy blouse, black pants, and the courthouse flats my mother once said made me look like I was always on my way to notarize something. Maybe I was. I put Grandpa's bell note in my coat pocket and the certified easement in my bag. At 1:30, I drove into town. Rookhaven Agricultural Credit Union sat beside the grain elevator, a square brick building with a flagpole, 3 teller windows, and a conference room where farmers had signed equipment loans, land notes, and bad ideas for 40 years. Hollis was waiting in the parking lot with Wintley Groves. Wintley wore his good denim jacket and a bolo tie shaped like a wheat sheaf. "You ready?" he asked me. "No," I said. He nodded. "Good. Ready people get careless." We walked in together. The conference room had a long oak table, a coffee tray, a pitcher of water, and a stack of closing folders, arranged too neatly for what was about to happen. Ledra Boone sat at the far end, silver hair cut short, glasses low on her nose, expression calm enough to make everyone else look loud. Orson Pike, the developer, sat to her right in a charcoal suit, scrolling on his phone. He had the polished, hungry look of a man who believed land became valuable only after it stopped being land. My father and mother were already there. Kester stood when I entered. Phaedra looked from me to Hollis to Wintley, then down at the binder in my hands. For once, she did not pick up her phone. My mother smiled. It was the same smile she used at church fundraisers when someone donated less than expected. "Meritt," she said. "This is a private family and business matter." I pulled out a chair and sat. "Then it should have stayed inside the family before you invited a developer." Hollis sat beside me and placed his briefcase on the table. Ledra Boone looked at him. "Mr. Fenwick, I understand you have documents relevant to title and authority." "I do," he said. Kester laughed under his breath. "This is ridiculous. Bramwell is in no condition to object, and Tavern is his son." Hollis opened the first binder. Bramwell objected in April. The room changed. It was not dramatic. Nobody gasped. But the air tightened. Hollis placed the certified easement on the table and slid it toward Ledra. "Recorded April 14th. Agricultural Preservation Easement, right of first refusal and emergency farm stewardship agreement. It restricts non-agricultural development on Willowbend Farm, gives formal first refusal rights to Meritt Vale, and names her emergency farm steward in the event of medical incapacity." Ledra read silently. She turned one page, then another. Orson Pike stopped scrolling. My mother folded her hands. Kester's face darkened. Hollis continued. "Here is the capacity affidavit from Dr. Eloin Cray, dated April 12th, confirming Mr. Vale understood the nature and legal consequences of this agreement. Here is the witness statement from Mr. Wintley Groves, who observed the signing. Here is the county recording receipt. Here is the current hospital record confirming Mr. Vale is presently medically incapacitated and unable to execute new property documents." Ledra took each page. Her face did not change, but her pen stopped moving. "We were provided an affidavit indicating the easement was recorded in error," she said. "I have that affidavit here." Hollis opened another tab. "Submitted by Kester Vale, not signed by Bramwell Vale, not supported by any recorded release, not approved by the County Agricultural Board, not signed by Ms. Vale, whose first refusal rights are directly affected. It also attaches a letter with a signature we dispute." He placed the fake letter beside Grandpa's April signature. Even from across the table, the difference was visible. Kester leaned forward. "You're not a handwriting expert." "No," Hollis said. "That is why we are not asking this room to rule on forgery. We are asking this room to recognize unresolved title defects, disputed authority, recorded development restrictions, and failure to serve required notice." Ledra looked at Orson Pike. "Mr. Pike, your intended use was agricultural?" Orson's jaw tightened. "Mixed rural commercial." Hollis slid another page forward. The preliminary site plan I had found in pieces and later obtained whole from Ledra's file. Storage units across the west field. rental cabins near the creek, gravel access road through the peach orchard. This was attached to the buyer's financing supplement, Hollis said. That intended use violates the recorded easement. My mother spoke then, voice soft and wounded. We were trying to pay for his care. That is all. This has been turned into something ugly by a granddaughter who cannot let go of childhood memories. I reached into my coat pocket and touched Grandpa's note. My voice came out steadier than I felt. If this was for his care, why did the development map put storage units over his orchard? Phaedra looked at her mother, then at Kester. My father stared at the map like he had never seen it before. Maybe he had not. That was the saddest part of my father. He could sign his silence to anything and then act surprised when it became real. Orson Pike closed his folder halfway. I was told the family had authority and the restriction was being cleared. Ledra turned to Kester. Mr. Vale, were you aware of the recorded easement before submitting the affidavit? Kester's mouth opened. My mother said, Careful. But anger was faster than caution. That paper was never supposed to matter, he snapped. Bramwell signs things all the time. He was old. He didn't understand what development rights were worth. The room went completely still. Wintley Groves stood slowly, both hands on the back of his chair. He understood better than you, he said. His voice was low, but it carried. He understood that you'd sell the bones of that farm if somebody waved a check. Ledra removed her glasses and set them on the table. Based on the documents presented, this transaction cannot be funded by this institution. My mother inhaled sharply. Kester said, You can't just, Ledra raised one hand. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The property is subject to a recorded agricultural preservation easement. The proposed use conflicts with that easement. The required right of first refusal notice was not served. Authority to execute on behalf of Mr. Bramwell Vale is disputed, and a submitted affidavit is now challenged. Until these issues are resolved by proper releases or court order, this sale cannot close here. Orson Pike stood. Then Pike Ridge is out unless clear title is delivered. He picked up his phone and folder. To him, Willowbend was already becoming some other problem, some other meeting. He nodded to Ledra, ignored my family, and left. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Then everything happened at once. My mother began crying, not quietly, but in the controlled way she cried when she wanted witnesses. You did this, she said to me. Your grandfather needed care, and you destroyed the only plan. No, I said. Grandpa made a plan before you made yours. Kester pointed at me across the table. My business is on the line. I have lenders calling every day. You think a farm can just sit there because an old man got sentimental? Your debt is not Grandpa's emergency, I said. My father flinched at that. Kester turned on him. Say something, Tavern. My father's lips parted, but no words came. For once, his silence did not protect anyone. It only showed what had always been there. Hollis closed the binder. Any further attempt to transfer, encumber, lease, subdivide, or grant access to Willowbend Farm without Miss Vale's stewardship authorization will be treated as a legal violation. We will seek an injunction if necessary. We will also be forwarding the disputed affidavit to the appropriate authorities for review. Phaedra stood so quickly her chair scraped the floor. This is insane, she whispered. But she was looking at the development map, not at me. Maybe for the first time she understood that her sad posts had been cover for something ugly. Or maybe she was only realizing the story would not look good online anymore. My mother gathered her purse with shaking hands. You have no idea what you've done to this family. I looked at her pearls, her perfect sweater, her tear-bright eyes. I know exactly what I stopped. She walked out first. Kester followed, cursing under his breath. Phaedra hurried after them. My father remained seated. He looked older than he had that morning. Meritt, he said. Just my name. Nothing else. I waited. He looked down at the table. I didn't know about the storage units. I wanted that to matter. I wanted ignorance to be a bridge back to him, But all I could think was that he had not asked enough questions because the answers might require courage. "You knew enough," I said. Then I picked up Grandpa's binder and walked out. The air outside was sharp and clean. Across the street, the grain elevator hummed. A semi rolled by carrying soybeans. Ordinary life kept moving, rude and beautiful. Wintley touched the brim of his hat and said he was going home to check his cattle. Hollis stood beside me for a moment. "Your grandfather knew what he was doing," he said. "Yes," I answered. "He did." I drove straight to Mercy Ridge. Grandpa was awake when I arrived, his eyes half open, the television murmuring above him. I sat beside the bed and took his hand. "It's done," I said. "The sale stopped. The Westfield is safe." His fingers moved against mine. I leaned closer. His mouth worked slowly. "Bell?" I smiled through tears I had not allowed myself to cry in the closing room. "I'll ring it when you come home." He closed his eyes and the smallest smile touched the good side of his face. The aftermath did not arrive like lightning. It came like winter, one cold fact at a time. Pike Ridge Development withdrew within 48 hours. Lidra Boone documented the failed closing and flagged the credit union file. Hollis sent formal notices to my family, the County Agricultural Board, and the hospital. The disputed affidavit was referred for investigation. Kester's equipment business, which had been leaning on the expected farm money like a man leaning on a rotten post, collapsed by January. 2 creditors sued. His black pickup disappeared first, then the office on Route 6 closed, then the sign came down from the fence. Phaedra deleted her posts about choosing care over nostalgia, but screenshots had already traveled through Rookhaven faster than weather. My mother stopped going to the Saturday market for a while. People in small towns do not always confront you directly. Sometimes they simply stop waving with their whole hand. My father came to Willowbend 3 weeks after the closing. Grandpa had been moved to a rehab center by then, and I was living at the farmhouse to manage chores, bills, insurance, feed deliveries, and the 1,000 small tasks that keep land from sliding into ruin. Tavrin stood in the mudroom with his cap in his hands, looking at the empty hook where Grandpa's coat usually hung. "Your mother is staying with Phaedra for a few days," he said. I nodded. He looked toward the kitchen. I should have stopped it. There were many things I could have said. I could have told him that stopping it would have required starting much earlier. I could have told him that weakness is not innocence. I could have asked whether he was sorry because he had hurt Grandpa or because the plan had failed. Instead, I said, "Yes." He closed his eyes. "Do you hate me?" I thought about that. Hate would have been simpler, cleaner. "No," I said. "But I don't trust you with him." That hurt him. I saw it land. But truth does not become cruelty just because it finally reaches the person who earned it. By spring, the County Agricultural Board confirmed the easement. A judge upheld the emergency farm stewardship clause until Grandpa could either resume control or appoint permanent help. Hollis said the right of first refusal remained valid and recorded. In plain language, Willowbend could still be a farm, but it could not be carved into storage units, cabins, or road lots by people who saw Grandpa's stroke as an opening. I reduced my hours at the recorder's office and spent mornings at Willowbend, afternoons at work, and evenings at rehab with Grandpa. He improved slowly. Stroke recovery is not like movies. There is no swelling music, no sudden speech returning whole. There are fingers moving one day, a spoon lifted the next, a word spoken after 10 failed tries. There is frustration. There is tiredness. There is dignity that must be protected in small ways, shaving cream warmed in your hands, socks that do not scratch, and not talking over him when he needs time to answer. The first word Grandpa said clearly was peach. It happened in late March. I had brought him a jar of last year's peach preserves, and when I opened it, the smell filled the rehab room. He looked at the jar and said, "Rough but clear." Peach. I cried so hard the nurse brought tissues and pretended not to see. After that, words came in pieces. Not many, not always, but enough. In April, 5 months after the stroke, I brought him home to Willowbend for an afternoon visit. Wintley built a ramp with 2 neighbors and refused payment. Mrs. Halden from the recorder's office sent a casserole. Even Leadra Boone mailed a card, plain and professional, saying she was pleased the matter had reached proper resolution. Grandpa sat in his wheelchair on the porch while the wind moved through the fields. The dinner bell hung above him. The peach orchard was blooming pale pink against the dark soil. For a long time he did not speak. He only looked. I wheeled him down the porch ramp and along the packed path toward the west field. The ground was soft, and the chair wheels left tracks. I had removed every survey flag months ago, but I still remembered where each one had been. One by one, I had pulled them from the soil like bad teeth. Now grass was growing over the holes. At the edge of the peach orchard, Grandpa lifted his right hand. I stopped. He looked at the field, the creek line, the old barn, the farmhouse, with its green kitchen windows catching sun. His mouth moved. I waited. I had learned to wait. Finally, he said, "Still?" One word, but I understood. "Still yours," I said. His eyes found mine. I corrected myself. "Still safe." He nodded once. When we got back to the porch, I stood beside the dinner bell. The rope was rough in my hand. Grandpa watched me. For a second, I was 8 years old again, muddy-kneed and sunburned, bringing supper home while Grandma laughed from the kitchen and Grandpa came across the field with his hat pushed back. I pulled the rope. The bell rang clear across Willowbend. Once. Twice. 3 times. The sound moved over the orchard, over the barn, over the west field they had tried to cut apart. Grandpa closed his eyes. When the last ring faded, he whispered, "Land remembers." I bent down and kissed his weathered hand. I remember too. That is what one signed paper did to my family. It did not heal my grandfather's body. It did not turn my father brave. It did not make my mother honest or my uncle sorry. It did not erase the hospital bed, the fake posts, the changed locks, or the map with storage units drawn over peach trees. But it stopped a sale that never should have reached a closing table. It gave the quiet person in the family a legal voice. It made a bank officer pause, a developer walk away, and a greedy man say the truth out loud. Most of all, it proved that Grandpa Bramwell had not been confused when it mattered. He had been clear enough to see the danger, clear enough to protect the farm, clear enough to choose who would stand where he could not. Some families sell what they never carried. They call it practical. They call it care. They call it a hard decision. But a hard decision made for selfish reasons is still selfish. Willowbend Farm is not rich land now. It is not a development site. It is not a quick rescue for someone else's debt. It is a working farm with a patched red barn, a cold creek, a peach orchard, and an old dinner bell that still rings when the day is done. And every time I hear that bell, I think of the envelope in the tractor manual, the brass tag under the porch post, and the one paper my grandfather signed months before his own sons tried to sell the ground from under him. He knew they might come for the farm. He knew I might be scared. So he left me proof, and when the time came, proof was enough. This story is inspired by general real-life situations and problems that people often share on Reddit and other public online platforms. We only take inspiration from the kind of issues people discuss online, such as family betrayal, property disputes, elder protection, inheritance conflict, and revenge stories. We do not copy any real story directly. This script/story is our own original written work, created and presented by us. Names, locations, timelines, businesses, legal details, characters, and personal information have been changed or fictionalized for privacy and creative storytelling. Any similarity to real people, places, or events is purely coincidental. This video uses AI-generated voiceover and AI-generated photos, videos, visuals. However, the story writing, topic selection, editing, video creation, final review, uploading, and creative presentation are done manually by us. This is not an automation channel. Real creative work is done by our channel, team. This content is made for entertainment, storytelling, commentary, discussion, and meaningful reflection. It is not legal advice, financial advice, or professional guidance. For real legal or property issues, please contact a qualified professional. Copyright. Notice: this story, script, narration style, editing, and overall creative presentation belong to us. Please do not copy, reuse, re-upload, translate, or republish our script, story, content without permission. Unauthorized use may result in copyright action or a copyright claim. The end